Hi everyone, my name is Emily LeFevers and I work with Miami's Alumni Association. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Cleveland Redbrick Leadership Series session. The Cleveland Chapter Career Development Committee has worked hard to turn this awesome leadership series into virtual events where they interview different Miami alumni that have become leaders in their careers in the Cleveland community. There is an Ask a Question box at the bottom of your screen. We will be monitoring this throughout, so feel free to ask a question, and if we have time at the end, we will ask Tim. Today's interview will be moderated by Miami alumnus Allen Dengler, who serves as the Cleveland Chapter's board president. Without further ado, take it away, Allen.
Hey, thanks, Emily. Good afternoon. Happy Monday, Cleveland alumni. My name is Allen Dengler. As Emily mentioned, I am the president of our local chapter here in Cleveland. Very special guest with us today, Tim Bratz. Before I do the introduction for Tim, I just hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. For those that still are lucky enough to have their fathers, hope you had a wonderful Father's Day and enjoyed the nice weather up here in Northeast Ohio. Tim Bratz is the CEO and founder of Legacy Wealth Holdings, a real estate investment company that acquires and transforms distressed apartment buildings into high-yield assets for their own portfolio. Working in real estate, Tim has built a passive business and created a residual income that allows him to live the lifestyle of his choice. As we mentioned in the email, one of Tim's passions is to educate and empower entrepreneurs, and that will be a common theme as we work through our Q&A today. And with that, I would like to welcome in Mr. Tim Bratz. How you doing today, Tim?
Good, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. How was your weekend? How was your Father's Day?
It was good. Got to go hang out with my dad and then my father-in-law on Saturday. Went out to eat with both of them. And then yesterday, man, just took a hike in the woods with my kids. I got a 5-year-old. My son will be 3 also. So took a hike and then kind of grilled out, man. Exactly what a Father's Day should be like, right?
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds beautiful. I did something similar. Was able to get lunch with my father, my mom, my wife. We played a little golf too. I'm not very good, but we're working on it. Just in time.
There you go. Practicing hard. Good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Just a little update for everybody out there. There are updated numbers. I want to at least correct ourselves. We did misquote your assets under management. Building a portfolio of up to 3,934 units to be exact, and around $335 million in assets. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So with that, just our usual first question of this Redbrick Leadership Series. Tell us why you chose Miami. What was your major? What activities you were involved in, both extracurricular and maybe within the school itself?
Yeah, man. I'm from Cleveland originally. Was looking at a bunch of schools around Ohio, and looked at Ohio State and a few others. And when I went to Miami, I just fell in love with the campus, and I knew that it was a highly rated educational school too. And my mom is actually a Miami alumni too, so it was a good fit. One of my best friends was going there. We're like, let's make it happen. So I went to Miami. I think a lot of people think they have to have their major squared away like before they even get into college. I can tell you that I had, I think, 4 different majors. I was a general business major. I was a management major. I was a general business, finance, then management, and then I ended up with a marketing major. I still graduated in 4 years somehow, but ended up with marketing, and that's just kind of what resonated with me the most as I went through the whole the gamut of all the different business school classes. And so, yeah, man, I like that. As far as participating in different things, I wasn't in a frat or anything. I had a lot of buddies who were in fraternities, and my wife was in a sorority. And then, I played all the different extracurriculars, and was playing baseball and basketball and all that kind of stuff, and plugged in. I was in Buck Rogers business leadership. I studied abroad in Luxembourg in my junior year, and traveled all around Europe. And so, man, I had an awesome time though. Love that town.
Yeah. It's one of those things where we keep talking about wanting to get back there, and it really is just gorgeous place.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very similar experience where I changed my major. I came in comm, changed it 3 different times, and finally settled. I was fortunate enough to graduate in 4 years myself too. But we've had conversations, you and I, in the past a little bit. Walk us through just your career path. I know you started out in New York, and then here you are today back in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah. So real high level, when I graduated from Miami, my brother was living out in New York City. And Chicago's a big pull, and there's some people that go out to New York too. And he's like, "Hey man, come out and live with me in New York, get a job out here. It's the only time you'll be able to live for free in New York City." I was like, "All right, sounds pretty good." So when I was going through college, it was 03 to 07. So I graduated in 2007, and this is when the real estate market was just going gangbusters, right? It's going crazy. Everybody's making money in real estate. I had like a construction business that I worked in the summer times, where I ran crews of all my buddies. We'd paint houses and do landscaping and do all sorts of different stuff. So I was kind of involved in real estate since 2005. 2006, I worked for one of the largest home builders in the country and interned with them. Man, I just remember like one of the Monday meetings, the VP came in and is like, "Hey, somebody give me a good idea." And he just started handing out $100 bills to everybody. Even if it wasn't a good idea, he'd give them a $100 bill. I was like, how much money is in real estate? And dude, I think a lot of people get shamed for following the money. And I don't think that's anything shameful or you should be ashamed about. And so I was a money motivated 20-year-old kid. And I thought, hey, there's so much money in real estate. Maybe I should get involved in real estate. And so when I moved out to New York City in 2007, stayed with my brother, and I thought you got involved in real estate by becoming a real estate agent. So I went and got my real estate license. And for some reason, instead of parking my license with like a residential real estate brokerage that brokered houses for sale and, people moving in, moving out and all that kind of stuff, I parked my license with a commercial real estate brokerage. And what I ended up doing was I handled leasing for businesses. So if there was an office for lease or a retail space for lease in Manhattan, I would either represent the landlord and help them market that space to bring a business in, or I'd represent a business who was looking for a location or a second location or a 10th location for their storefront. And dude, I just remember the first deal I ever did. It took me 8 months to close it. And it was a little 400 square foot space, like, I don't know, the size of 2 bedrooms. And it was in Greenwich Village. And I signed a lease between the landlord and the tenant for on 400 square feet, $10,000 a month, with a 4% annual increase, along with a 12-year lease term. And I remember just, sitting back, being a kid who's money motivated, looking at the numbers and realizing this guy, the landlord, is going to make almost $2 million over the next 12 years for doing something one time. And that didn't even include the other retail spaces. It didn't include all the apartments above that. And I'm just like, I'm on the wrong side of the coin. I need to be owning real estate instead of brokering it, right? So, I can't afford anything. I'm a punk 22-year-old kid at the time. So I'm like, I'm gonna move down south. We had a really bad, crappy, cold winter, and I decided to move down south, move to Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful town, absolutely amazing. Didn't even know anybody there, just heard good things about it. Made a lot of friends pretty quickly though. And when I moved down there, I went through this whole, they call it analysis paralysis, where you think you have to learn everything before you do anything. And just studied the heck out of real estate and real estate investing and how I could buy properties and flip them and start holding and earning rental income. And, I had this idea that I needed to learn everything before I could actually jump into it. But it's kind of like, it's like learning to swim, right? You could read about swimming in a book, but if you don't get in the water, you're not going to learn how to swim. And so I decided I needed to jump in. So I didn't have any money. I was 23 years old at the time. And this is in 2009 now. So this is, the market has totally crashed. And this is a real estate crash, right? It's not from some COVID-19 or something crazy that happened. This was because of real estate is why the entire economy was collapsing. And so nobody wanted to invest in real estate. Nobody wanted to invest in real estate with a 23-year-old kid, and nobody wanted to invest in real estate with somebody who's never done a deal before. So I couldn't get money anywhere to go out and buy a house. And I just, I think a lesson that I would love to convey to Miami students, Miami alumni, is like, a lot of people say I can't do something because they don't have the resource, they don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't have the knowledge, the experience, or the resources. But I heard Tony Robbins say once that resourcefulness is the ultimate resource. And if you're resourceful, you can go and find the time, you can find the money, you can find the knowledge. And so I've always been, pretty resourceful in what I do. And so I heard that you can call up your credit card company. I got them to increase my credit limit to $15,000, and I bought the cheapest house on the entire MLS in Charleston and fixed it up, literally paying my buddies with beer and pizza kind of a thing, and turned around and sold that house in the worst economy ever and made 14 grand on it. And so, that was like the start of how I got involved in real estate. and just did it again, got into flipping. And then I got into some buy and hold, like rental properties. And I really liked that element of having passive income and residual income coming in. And then I thought, how do I scale that? And that's how I got into apartment building. So in 2012, I bought my first apartment building. That's also when I got engaged to my wife, who's a Miami girl, met at Miami mergers, right? And she's from Cleveland. So I moved back to Cleveland 2012, and then just kind of focused on my business. And so, today you got just shy of 4,000 rental units and about $330 million of portfolio value. I own mostly apartment buildings, some office. I own a couple of vacation rentals. I own some land that we're developing. I've done pretty much everything, a little bit of retail stuff too, but really, really like apartments. So that's high level, man.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think we around this office we call it baptism by fire. But yeah, just diving right in. So you look at you're back in your early career. You're working in the big city. You mentioned some stuff that you'd like to pass on. What other kind of career advice, if you could just focus in on that segment, would you offer? Things that you learned that you kind of had to work through early in your career?
Yeah, I think a big one for me is we all overestimate what we can accomplish in like 12 or 24 months. We all think we're going to light the world on fire as soon as we get out of school or within a couple of years thereafter. And there's a pay your price kind of a thing where you got to go out and become like an industry expert. You got to really know what the hell you're talking about and what you're doing. And the reality is, like, there's a statistic out there. You have to spend 10,000 hours doing something before you become an expert. And so if you multiply it all out, I think it's like 5 or 6 years before you're really experienced. And I didn't understand that. I remember actually getting out of school and trying to apply for jobs, and they wanted people with 5 or 6 years of experience in that industry. And I was like, I got a better work ethic, so I can go and get that job. No, it was because there's certain things that you learn just by putting in the hours, right? And so I think, I think we overestimate what we can do in maybe a year or two, but we grossly underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years, right? Like, if you would have asked me what my goals were 10 years ago versus what they are today and where I am today, there's no chance that I've been like, oh, if I could own 1,000 units, if I could own 100 units, like, right, that would be unbelievable. I'd retire forever, So to own 4,000, it's like, holy cow, how did that ever happen? So I think that's one thing is just kind of be patient. Things will play out. The other thing that I learned early on was about mentors, and mentorship is really, really important, and finding somebody you align with and somebody that can teach you the ropes in whatever industry that you really want to get involved in. But I got involved with bad mentors early on. I had some really bad mentors who didn't do things the right way. But I think that a bad mentor can teach you just as much as a good mentor. Like, I learned how I didn't want to operate in business. I learned what I didn't want to be perceived as by other people. I learned that, a lot of things about how not to do business that way and how to do it the right way. And so, and again, that comes with working with people and dealing with people in the real world. And then all of a sudden you can align with somebody who does have, values that align with yours and is going in the same direction and doing things the way that should be done. So, finding a good mentor early on can really catapult you and give you some quantum leaps forward in your career.
Yeah. A common kind of entrepreneurial theme is you're gonna have struggles. You're gonna have to work through, and this goes with anything, but I think business owners and entrepreneurs specifically struggles early on. What are some struggles you experienced, kind of the grind of, and then what were some tactics that you used to pull yourself up from kind of the bootstraps and overcome them?
I think, the mentor thing was tough. I had some really bad breakups with mentors, like business partnerships that then collapsed. Everybody's happy when you're, setting your sights on getting a business started, and everybody's optimistic on that's going to happen the right way. And, just life happens, right? Like, some people move away, some people have kids, some people, just don't fulfill on the promises that they said that they were going to fulfill on. And so, partnerships is really, really tough, at least getting married across all of your business ventures. So if you're looking to start a business early on, it's it's fearful, like you're scared of what might happen. And it's easy to have, it's makes you feel more comfortable if you have somebody else with you going through that fear with you. So you want to bring on a business partner. You want to have somebody who you can bounce some ideas off of. What I found is that business partners across all businesses usually don't play out the way that you want them to. Especially somebody that like early on. Like now I know, I actually just met with my attorney who's a business partner and a business partner across all my businesses because I know what his work ethic's like. We've worked together for 8 years and we've partnered on deal by deal basis over the past year and a half, 2 years. And so like, I'm okay bringing him into other new ventures because I feel comfortable working with him and he knows what my work ethic is like and I know what his is like. But early on, I don't think I would have partnered like that with people. I would have done more of like a joint venture deal by deal basis. Like, let's partner on this one house. If this one house goes well together, then we could do a second house, or then we could buy an apartment building, or then we can do whatever and start up another business. But to get married across all your businesses was a mistake, and I had to liquidate my entire portfolio in 2015. So I've been able to build up what I built up in the past 5 years because I had the information, I had the knowledge and the skill set and everything. But that was something that was tougher early on, and I think the whole expectation piece too. So yeah. So I mean, those are a couple of things, like thinking that I had accomplished more earlier on, and that I'd light the world on fire. I thought that would happen earlier, and it just didn't. So I wasn't patient enough. I think having a little bit of patience and realizing that, again, we overestimate what we can do in 12 months and underestimate what we can do in 4 or 5 years. And just make sure that you have a long-term vision, right? You don't get derailed if you have a long-term vision. You don't get too high when you're high. You don't get too low when things go bad. You just kind of have a long-term vision, keeps the bar down, and you don't go flying off that emotional roller coaster.
Yeah. This is kind of a sidebar. I'm just curious, because I think it's important, especially again for entrepreneurs. Yeah. How you mentioned how your goals evolved over time. What was your strategy for setting your goals, and kind of how does that position you moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but allegedly there was some study done at Yale or something in the 60s, and they took a class poll of how many people actually had written goals set out, and it was like 3% of the graduating class. And then they come back 15 or 20 years later and they poll everybody again. And what they found out is those 3% of people who had written goals and objectives and a clear vision and path of what they wanted to build for their life had accumulated more wealth, were happier, had better relationships, and were healthier than the other 97% of people combined, right? Like they had things dialed in because it was they knew where they were going. And it's like, I'll give you an example. I told you my daughter's 5 years old, right? So she's 5 years old. She's all into all these Disney movies and watching Disney Plus during the whole COVID breakdown thing. And she ends up watching Alice in Wonderland. If you've ever seen Alice in Wonderland, she chases that bunny down the rabbit hole, gets into Wonderland, goes on all these crazy adventures. And during that, she's going down this path and there's a fork in the road. And all of a sudden that Cheshire cat appears. It's like that little invisible cat with the crazy grin appears up in the tree. And she's like, "Oh, Mr. Cat, do you know which path I should take?" And the cat goes, "Well, where are you going?" She goes, "I'm not really quite sure." He goes, "Well, I guess it doesn't matter where you're going then, right? Which path you take, just take whichever one you want." And I think a lot of people go through life without having a destination in place. And it's like, dude, you plug this into your GPS of where you want to go. You have to have a destination in order to create a roadmap in order to get there. And I think a lot of people don't have that roadmap or don't create that roadmap, and they think it's just going to kind of fall in their lap. You got to be intentional with this stuff. So, for me early on, I have essentially 4 major categories. I have finance goals. I have health and fitness goals. I have relationship goals. And then I have, like spiritual and mental goals. And what do I want to accomplish? How do I want to become a better person? Maybe I want to learn how to play piano or speak Spanish or read X number of books, right? And so that's kind of my mental, spiritual type stuff. Fitness, how quick can I run a mile, or how many times a week do I work out, or what do I want to weigh, like all those kinds of goals. And you want your goals to be measurable, right? Like if you can quantify it, then you can manage it. Like you have to have a metric in place. If you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. And so, you want quantifiable goals, relationship goals. How often do you go out on a date night with your spouse? How often do you take your kids out on a date night? How often do you hang out with your parents and go visit them? And how often do you get together with your Miami buddies and go on a long weekend vacation, maybe back to Oxford, whatever that looks like quantify that kind of stuff. And then the finance goals are like that's easily quantifiable. You can measure money and measure sales and generate new businesses, whatever you want to do there. So I've always had goals, and I've always had long-term goals, but recently I've kind of only done short-term goals because this stuff changes so quickly and so rapidly. So I've been kind of like only doing about 12-month goals and short bursts for 12 months. And then if you know what your goal is for 12 months, then you can divide it by 12, right? You take whatever that metric is, divide by 12, and that's what your 1 month goal is. And so if you can stay online for that every single month, then it gets you there. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic answer. And for our audience today, that was not something I gave Tim off to prepare for, and they could tell just passionate. He sticks to it. So thanks for answering that. To get us, I guess, back on track here a little bit with the programming, the leadership style. How many employees do you have? Looking at your leadership style overall, what have you noticed a kind of a progression in terms of what your leadership style has worked towards?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think everything rises and falls on leadership. I think everything, if you got, as a leader of your organization, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to take 100% ownership over everything. And I can tell you early on, man, I was a bad leader, right? Like I'd hire people, I wouldn't train them. I always subscribe to the, they say hire slow, fire fast. I do the exact opposite, right? Like I hire fast and I fire really slow. People who should have been gone a year ago are still on my team. And, anybody who raises their hand, they're ready to just get going. I hire them and then I don't train them whatsoever. At least that's what happened earlier on. And that's not really the way that you should do it. I'm still a little bit, ready, fire, and then aim kind of mentality. Because I think action is more important than perfecting. Like imperfect, what is it? Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Does that make sense? So just take action, right? Even if it's not perfect, just go. And you can kind of align it a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, early on in business, I think especially when I first got started, I was like, who wants? I wrote the story in my head of somebody who wanted to work with me is because they believed in me, right? When I realized that it was just because nobody else would hire them, and I'm the only one who would hire them, that was like an epiphany for me in business. So now, I've also realized I'm not a good hirer of people. So I bring in outside experts, like a chief human resources expert who comes in and he goes and posts the ads on Indeed. And then he goes through all the resumes, and then he gets on phone calls and breaks it down to like 3 people. And then I get on the phone. So I think understanding what your unique ability is key. And so, when he brings people to me, a couple of things that I've learned in leadership skills is number one, setting very clear expectations. I used to get dressed up when people would come in to my office and interview because I thought that's what they wanted to see. And the reality is, this is the most dressed up I ever get, is a hat and a polo and shorts, right? Like I'd never, ever get dressed up. And so when somebody comes in and interviews you, and you're wearing a suit, and that's not the company culture that you've created, then all of a sudden they feel like they've almost been defrauded, right? So when I come in, I sit down, I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops and a hat, and I'm like, hey, here's what we got going on. I'm a crazy entrepreneur psycho, right? Like my head is going a million miles an hour, and I need you to come in and organize my thoughts, right? I create chaos. I need somebody to create order. And most people are like, who the hell would ever interview somebody like that? It sets very clear expectations. I just hired a rock star marketing director for my business, and she's crushing it. She's like, this is the best decision I ever made. It's not stuffy like all the other jobs I've ever interviewed for, and blah, blah, blah. And it's so much fun. And she's doing an amazing job because of how authentic we were in that process. So I think that's a big deal. And then the other thing that I'll say is a few years ago, a good buddy of mine was staying at the Four Seasons or something in in Hawaii, and we have a group of like entrepreneurs that meet up about once a quarter. And when he was staying at the Four Seasons, Tito Beveridge, who started Tito's Vodka, his last name's Beveridge, believe it or not, was actually at the Four Seasons with him. He's like, "Hey man, I'm in this group of entrepreneurs. Will you hop on a phone call with us?" And about I think it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, maybe. I hopped on a phone call with Tito Beveridge for 2 hours, and he told us an entire life story. My biggest takeaway from that 2-hour phone call was when he started hiring employees, he only hired people who had amazing attitudes. He didn't care about their level of talent. He didn't care about their level of expertise or how they, have experience in distilling liquor or working in the food and bev industry or anything like that. All he did is he found people who had amazing attitudes, were happy and enjoyed going to work and were uplifting and supportive and all that kind of stuff. And he just built his organization, trained them on everything else. And he's like, "Listen, man, now I got, I don't know how many it was, like 400 employees or whatever it was." And he's like, "We have the most amazing company culture. Everybody's amazing. Everybody's fun to be around. Everybody's happy all the time. We give back to the local community and communities all over the country and da 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 da." And so that always resonated with me. It's like, hire people who you like being around and who are positive and uplifting, because man, it is an absolute like terror on your soul if you hire somebody who's just a Debbie Downer all the time. So hire good people and set proper expectations.
Yeah, it's great. Talk a lot about in just anything I've read on you, just from talking to you a handful of times, the work-life balance and building a business around your lifestyle. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, early on, man, I was just like burning the can. I was never really like, listen, man, I went out and I partied and I did all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And had fun, but I always had a long-term vision, like I mentioned earlier. And so I'd go out and party 1, maybe 2 days a week, but I worked my butt off all the rest of the time. And so for, I don't know, whatever it was, until I had a kid when I was 28, 9, 30, I don't even know, 30 years old, I had my daughter. And, for like 10 years out of school, I just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and paid those dues then. I will say that since I've had kids, I've been much more intentional about how I spend my time. Before, I'd let anybody waste my time. If somebody wanted to go grab coffee, I would drive 20, 30 minutes, sit with them for an hour, and then drive 30 minutes back. And I'd waste 2 hours a day grabbing coffee with somebody. And maybe it turned into something, maybe it didn't. After you have kids, you realize you only have so much time in a day, right? Like you got to go and help your spouse. You got to go out and spend time with your kids. And nobody wants to be a public success and a private failure. So family's got to come first. And for me, I said, hey, I want to be able to hang out and wake up and have breakfast with my kids in the morning. And I want to be able to come home and not look at my phone. And this is actually, it came from a really, a punch in the face type or punch in the gut kind of experience. But one time I came home and my daughter, she was like 2.5 at the time. And after dinner, we had dinner at 6:00 or whatever. And after dinner, I see my phone blinking over in my little office nook, and I go over to it, and I'm texting on my phone. And my daughter comes over after dinner, and she's tugging on my shirt. She says, "Daddy, will you come and play with me?" And I was like, yeah, hang on 1 second, baby. And I'm texting, and she's like, Daddy, come play with me in the playroom. Yeah, hang on. Texting. I said, baby, hang on 1 second. Why don't you go over there and play? Let me finish up this message, and then I'll be right over there. Okay. And I finished sending the message, and I look at the message, and I was like, I look at my daughter playing by herself in the playroom. I look back at the message and realize it wasn't important, and it wasn't even urgent. And I'm like, my daughter, who comes to me for love and support and affection and attention, I just told her that this was more important than her, is essentially what I did. And now, I don't know how many times does that have to happen before all of a sudden, instead of coming to daddy and saying, daddy is where I go for love and support, attention. Instead it goes, daddy, is where I go for, if I want to be ignored, right? Or if I want to be disappointed, or if I want to be neglected. And like, I was like, dude, what is that? All of a sudden, now my daughter is dating jerks, right? Who don't treat her well, who don't open up a door for her, don't come to the front door and pick her up for a date, who don't pay for them. And all of a sudden it turns into a very, very bad situation. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. What the hell? And so it was like a real big punch in the gut. And so what I ended up doing was time blocking, and I got really, really good at time blocking. And so one of the things that really helps me with work-life balance and doing this is like, I dedicate 6 hours a day to go into the office. I came into the office today at 1 p.m. I'm talking to you at 5 p.m. I'm going to be home by 6 p.m. Right. So I really don't work in the office more than 5 or 6 hours a day, 4 days a week. I came in 3 days last week. The way that I'm able to do that is because when I come in, I'm in the zone, dude. Like, I get to work and I don't let anybody distract me. Like, some people have these I don't know, early 2000s management types where I have an open door, come in anytime you want. And dude, you don't get anything done. Then there's people just coming to you with their problems that they should know how to solve. So for me, dude, like right now, all day today, I've had a do not disturb on my door knob, so people do not come into my office, so I can focus on getting my stuff done. And I really just focus on revenue generating activities, right? I stay as close to the revenue line as possible, and I don't get too far away. I see a lot of people starting businesses and they're like, I got to get a website. I got to get my business cards. I got to do this. I got to set this up. No, you need to go and generate revenue. Revenue solves all problems. And so when I come in, I know that the highest and best use of my time is meeting with my executive team, right? I just met with my COO, my chief investment officer, and my director of acquisitions. We just went through and met for about 2 hours on, what the business is looking like moving forward, right? We do that every Monday. And so do that. And then I'm really active on like social media. And I think there's a lot of spread and a lot of opportunity in social media that people don't realize is there. A lot of people just do it to take pictures of themselves getting drunk. And I think social media is a massive tool from a business perspective. If you're out there giving value and acknowledging people and educating people and sharing with people, all of a sudden, like, it comes back and this compound effect occurs where, dude, it's just like, I've had so much opportunity come to me, investors with millions and millions of dollars who've invested in our projects that I met through Facebook, right? Or people who have sent me deals through Instagram that we ended up buying, multi-million-dollar deals, right? All because of social media, because we're always out there just kind of talking about what we're doing, how we're doing it, educating people on building wealth and educating people on buying real estate, all that kind of stuff. So, just finding, I think narrowing it down and knowing really what your unique ability is and the highest and best use of your time, and focusing on that.
Yeah. Wow. That story's moving. I don't have kids yet. I look to kind of the future. Eventually we do hope to have kids. And I do worry about that for myself, making sure that I am allocating time appropriately, and I want to be able to work hard and give back to my company. But at the same time, I don't want to miss sporting events. I don't want to miss things that are important. So,
Allen, think about this, man. Like, I'm time blocking right now to be on this interview with you, right? I wouldn't take another phone call right now. I wouldn't. So, how can we do that for work, but we don't do it for our families?
Sure.
I realized that. And so what I ended up doing is I took my calendar and I just took, from 4 o'clock on, I'm booked. Hey, Tim, will you come and speak at a real estate investors association? No, I'm sorry. I have an appointment already. It's with my kids and my wife. Right. So, I just don't even book that stuff. The reason I'm here with you a little bit later is because I hung out at my house until noon or 1 o'clock today, in order to kind of balance that whole thing out, because I made a commitment to you guys. But I'm not going to come in early and stay late. Like, I got to dedicate X number of hours a day to my family. And listen, man, I'm not perfect. I'm still checking messages. But I'm a lot better than I used to be. Right. And I think when you're aware of that kind of stuff, you become better at being a parent.
Yeah. One, we obviously do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I did notice the irony of me drinking a cup of coffee while you were talking about how you don't get coffee with people as much as you used to. So, okay. With that, also, you look at the real estate environment right now. If somebody wanted to get into real estate, where would you start? Where should they start?
I mean, dude, I just heard a statistic that from the beginning of civilization up until 2003, there are 2 exabytes whatever that exabytes of information was ever created. Now that same amount is created every 2 days. That's how much information is out there. So if you want to get educated on real estate, it's everywhere. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life and business, really life, is that the better questions you ask, the better answers you get. It's like in Google, right? If I type in restaurants in Google, it's going to pull up every restaurant in the country. If I type in restaurants in Cleveland, Ohio, it's going to give me a more narrow, precise answer. If I type in Italian restaurants in Ohio City, right, it's going to give me an even more articulated answer. And I see that in life, right? The more detailed and more pointed of a question you ask, the more detailed of an answer you're going to get, and you're going to get better answers for better questions that you ask. So, I would jump on Google and I'd look up, how to buy apartment buildings, or how to buy real estate with no money with none of my own money, right? And then all of a sudden you're going to get a ton of PDFs, a ton of different websites, a ton of different podcasts, a ton of information on that stuff. If anybody ever wants information on how to get started in real estate, hit me up, shoot me a Facebook message with your email address, and I'll send you one of the earlier PDF programs and stuff that I bought early on that helped me just kind of gain insight on this stuff. But I think, there's so many podcasts out there that you can find. Finding somebody that you resonate with, that you like their mindset, you like where their core values are. I think that's a big deal. And then just, listen to their content and consume it. And then eventually pull the trigger, just go out and buy something. That's going to teach you more than reading 100 books on how to buy apartment buildings or how to buy houses.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic. You look at, just to glance over the questions. Two people did ask what books you would recommend. So I guess, do you have anything on top of mind that you would specifically recommend?
Real estate related?
Yeah. Yep.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad is an amazing one by Robert Kiyosaki. If you guys haven't heard of that, definitely jump on Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's so many different real estate books out there. Hop on, I have a podcast called The Legacy Wealth Show. Go to legacywealthshow.com and you can watch a bunch of podcasts and learn about real estate. Real estate is not HGTV, guys. So what you see on HGTV is complete baloney. I know some of those guys. I was actually on the phone last week with the guy who's on Flipping Boston, right, on A&E, and I've been on. I know all those people. Tarek El Moussa, who's flip or flop guy, his people just called me 2 weeks ago and we had a phone call thinking about investing and doing some stuff together. So I know those guys and I know where they make their money and where they don't make their money. And I can tell you don't make money flipping houses. It is total brain damage. And everybody who gets into real estate and starts flipping houses gets out of flipping houses very, very quickly because they realize it's a big pain in the butt. And they start doing more investment oriented type stuff rather than just flipping houses. So, flipping apartment buildings or flipping rental properties is much more of a better game plan. So, you guys can, I'm on my website, legacywealthholdings.com/podcast, and go and check out a bunch of podcasts and stuff that I've been on talking about real estate investing. And then any of those, a lot of those are real estate podcasts. So if there's one of those people who have interviewed me that you really like, or you really resonate with how they ask questions and stuff, then subscribe to their podcast and then jump on there. I think that's probably a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, my wife's gonna be very disappointed that HGTV isn't the way to flip houses.
They don't put closing costs in there. They don't put holding costs in there. They don't put realtor commissions in there. Dude, they're those numbers are so fake.
Yeah, that's good to know. So you look at the kind of future of real estate, and I know you say you're majority residential, but you do have some commercial side. Do you have some insight on kind of where the future? We all don't have crystal balls. I get it. But there is that concern that commercial real estate's in trouble. But so what is your input? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of speculation on it, right? I don't like to speculate because even if you talk to somebody who's an economist 120 days ago and they told you what 2020 was going to shape up like, they'd all be 100% wrong, right? So anybody who is right now trying to speculate on what's going to happen with the economy, nobody's has ever lived through this type of COVID-19 pandemic type thing before. So I think it would only be speculation. That being said, I can tell you this. There's a lot of different asset classes in commercial real estate. One is retail. Retail has been getting spun on its head with Amazon for the past several years anyways. This has just been like a catalyst of putting a lot of businesses out of business by being shut down for 90 days and the whole riots and people have their windows broken in and all that. Like, why would I want a retail space anymore? Why not just go online, sell my product online, and have a warehouse over here? So if a bunch of retail now goes vacant, what happens? So maybe the price of retail comes down and like what you can rent retail space for comes down. And now people don't want an office up on the 15th floor. They think, hey, maybe I can have some walk-in traffic if I go and have a storefront. And so now a lot of office people move into retail space. What then happens to office? I don't know. It probably is going to get repurposed into multifamily housing, apartments, or maybe self-storage, right? The two asset classes that I heavily invest in is apartments, and I do some self-storage stuff too. I have a couple of small offices, but they're small. They're for entrepreneurs that just need to go get out of their house and have like a quiet place to work. It's very inexpensive. It's not like these big office buildings that you see in downtown Cleveland or anything. They're more like in the suburbs, more for like co-working type of, kind of like a WeWork type space is what we do. But I don't have a lot of it. I have, 50 units or something. So, to speculate what's going to happen and I think there's already a lot of different things going on. That's why I don't really buy a lot of retail or office or, and then you see Airbnb totally spinning hospitality on its head and what's going to happen with hotels and stuff. So, the technology is just fascinating on how it's moving everything around. Obviously, people are always going to need a place to live. That's why I really, really like apartments. 95% of my portfolio is apartments. And what I can tell you is this: despite what happens in every economy, there's good deals and there's bad deals. There were good deals and bad deals a year ago. There's going to be good deals and bad deals a year from now, and there's good deals and bad deals today. So if you find a good deal and you find it at a deep discount and you can put some sweat equity in it and create some force the appreciation and the value on it, and it cash flows, right? And like you have some good buying criterias like that, then you're going to be able to find great deals all the time, and you should buy great deals, right? I would actually buy hotels right now, but I'd only buy it for like 20 cents on the dollar, right? I'm not going to pay some retail price for it. So if you can find a deep discount on a hotel, maybe you buy it. Same thing with office, same thing with retail. If I found it at a low enough price, then I would still pull the trigger and actually take it down. So just kind of depends.
Yeah. Do you outsource your appraising deals? Like, how do you find, or how do you understand that if something is at a discount?
Yeah, I have an in-house. So commercial real estate's valued differently than like a house. If you go and buy a house at 123 Main Street, or it's listed for sale, and you look down the street, what else sold? It's based on comparables is what it's called. So, that's a 4-bed, 3-bath also. And because that one sold for $250,000, I should be able, this one's probably worth $250,000 also. That's called the comparable approach. It's very, I don't know, kind of arbitrary on like, what are the values on these things? And what do you think it's going to be in 6 months from now? Versus commercial real estate is much more, it's all based on numbers. It's called the income approach. So let's say you got $1 million and you want to invest it in something and you want a 10% return on your investment. So you would go and look it up for an apartment building that brought in X number of dollars of rents, of income, minus this much in expenses, which means you have a net income, right? So it brings in $200,000 of rents. You have $100,000 of expenses and taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and management, and all those things. And it leaves you with $100,000 of net income. That's what you're left with at the end of the day. So what that sells for is completely up to you, right? Like somebody who's got big money out of New York might pay $2 million for that deal because they only want a 5% return on their investment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a Midwest guy. I need a 10% return, right? Like you might come in and say, it's only worth $1 million to me. Me being a full-time real estate investor who does this on a full-time basis is always looking at deals. I might want a 15% return on investment, I might only pay $650,000 for that deal, right? So it just kind of depends on who you are, how much money you got, what are you looking for, what kind of value the deal brings to you. And so it's more based on what are you looking for on that deal. So typically properties will appraise for, and it's called a cap rate. I don't want to kind of overcomplicate this whole thing, but it's called a cap rate. And that's essentially like a 6 or 7% return on investment. 6 or 7% cap rate is what properties typically sell for and value at in the Cleveland market. So if I wanted it for a discount and I wanted 50 cents on the dollar, then it would have to yield me like a 12 or 13% return on investment, or 12 or 13% cap rate, if that makes sense. So
cool. Thank you just for the insight. Obviously, you know what you're talking about, and I appreciate you kind of walking through that. You did. I don't want to repeat ourselves, but if you had one takeaway for a new entrepreneur, just summarize it up, what would it be?
I would say I'd go back to taking 100% ownership. Right, like everything rises and falls on you. Right, if people aren't willing to lend you money, like figure out how can you become better. Right, I think a lot of people hope for an easy button to push, and it's not. Don't wish for it to be easier. Wish for you to be better. Right, go out and become better. Refine your skills. Become more skillful, more talented, and you'll get more respect in the industry. Right, and the other thing that's you can't fast track this. It just comes with time. Is your character and your credibility and gaining respect in the industry. That comes with just doing deals over time. And so you gotta be patient in that stuff. So, I mean, take 100% ownership, always work harder on yourself than you do in your business, right? Nobody can ever take the knowledge that's in your brain. And if you took all my property away today, I'd have it all back within 24 months. There's no doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. Because if you drop me in some city I've never even been to, I could do a deal within 90 days because of all the work I've done in my own head over the past 12, 15 years that I've been investing in the real estate world. So you can't ever take that away from me. You can take all my property away, but you can never take your insight and your knowledge and your skill sets away. And so because I know that stuff, I think that's invaluable, right? And so always be working on yourself, always be refining your skills. Make sure you're reading good books, the ones that develop you personally and develop your skill set and your mindset, and everything comes down to mindset. Like that's 90% of this whole game, and just thinking big.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you. Those are the hard hitting questions that I got for you.
Yeah,
we do have some easy
questions.
Off the cuff. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us. But before we wrap up here, some easy softballs to reminisce on. Favorite place in Oxford?
Favorite place in Oxford? Oh man, I don't know. I used to just run around Cookfield all the time. I lived in Dorsey Hall, and I'd always go for a jog around Cookfield. So I have fond memories of that. As far as bars or restaurants go, like I don't know. La Bodega, I loved. I don't know. It's just kind of like there's a couple of things. There's a couple of places that are no longer there. Smoking Ox and it's turned into something else. And obviously, I was at Brick Street. I don't even know if it's still called Brick Street or not. But that was our hangout. Skybox, right? Yeah, we lived at Skybox. And it's funny, like you go back and you're like, that's not the cool bar anymore. Now this one's the cool bar, and it rotates every couple of years. And so it's so don't date me too much if I say Skybox was cool and it's totally not cool, right? Because it was really cool when we were there.
Yeah. Favorite restaurant in Cleveland?
Favorite restaurant in Cleveland? I love I think Red Steak is the most unbelievable steak I've ever had. I love Red Steakhouse. I always take people there. I like more casual type atmosphere though, and more casual type environments. What's the one? There's an Italian place that's on the Via Aqueduct or whatever in Ohio City. I can't remember the name of it. That's a real.
What's a Lago? Oh man, what is now? It starts with an L. There's like
it's Luca.
Luca. I was like, there's
That's
three
a good spot.
restaurants that all start with L, and I always get confused.
Yeah. That's a good spot. The Irish place over on 45th in Detroit is a good spot. I mean, there's so many, and I love Chipotle, right? Like that's usually my go-to.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
I think the new the guy that used to be the CEO of Chipotle is now Taco Bell, and he's a Miami guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Favorite Cleveland sports team?
Indians. I love going to the Tribe games.
Yeah. Hopefully we get some baseball back.
I know, man. I got season tickets, and we haven't been able to go to a game yet, so I'm like itching.
You're itching. Yeah. It's I feel like it's been March for about 3.5 months now. It's
I know.
I think favorite outside of restaurants, just favorite place to go, take the family and
Metro Parks. Dude, I live in the Metro Parks, man.
Yeah, you're a West Sider?
Yeah, I live in Strongsville and my office in Lakewood. So I'm always in the Strongsville Metro Parks. I'm from Parma originally, so I like the West Creek Reservation. They've done an amazing job with that. It's beautifully done now. And go over the Rocky River Reservation stuff once in a while too.
Perfect. Hey, that wraps it up for me. I'll turn it back over to Emily. Emily, do we have any other questions on the line? You there?
Yes.
Emily,
We do. So we have two that you haven't answered yet. One of them, actually, they're both from Evan. How do you and have you gone about finding funding, like personal loans, syndication, partners, etc., and where have you found the most success?
Yeah, great question. This is more of a real estate specific question. I like raising private money. So I like going to people, like specifically where I raise the most money is entrepreneurs who are not in real estate. So they're making a bunch of money in their tech business or their production facility. They launch a new product. They're in education. They're in consulting. They're making money. And what I found is entrepreneurs are really good at making money, but they're not really great at then investing their money. And they need insights on what do they do with their money. And real estate's one of those things where you can deploy money in real estate and everybody feels comfortable with real estate. You can see it, touch it, feel it, and drive to it, visit it. And so people feel comfortable and confident investing in real estate versus like, I hate the stock market, right? Although people are aware of it, you just kind of, and it's more of an educational type thing than anything else. So when I go out, I'm telling people, I'm always talking to people about how I raise capital, right? I think in real estate, if you're specifically want to learn about real estate, you got to be doing two things at all times. That's sourcing deals and sourcing money. Always be looking for opportunities for deals and always be looking for money or talking to people about money and how you structure your deals. And so for me, I mean, you can Google search hard money lenders, Cleveland, Ohio, right? Or entrepreneurs, Cleveland, Ohio, and you can partner up or go meet people who have money and then go and deploy it into deals. And, again, you get educated on this stuff and you realize there's a couple different ways to secure somebody with their money. And if you're just buying a single family house for $100,000, you can give somebody a note, promissory note, a mortgage, add them to their insurance and pay them a 10 or 12% return on their investment. And that's a smoking deal for them, right? If you're like buying apartment buildings or commercial real estate, some of the bigger stuff, then that's when you get into syndication. And so syndication is raising capital and then giving equity up in the deal itself. So they're not really secured by anything other than the operating agreement, but then they own equity in the actual deal. So there's benefits to both. One is a very predictable rate of return. The other one has equity upside, but also equity downside, less predictability, but you can really build a lot of wealth that way. What we've ended up doing is creating a hybrid of both. I've realized people want predictability on their investment. So we pay a fixed return on investment. And then we also give a little piece of the equity forever in that deal. So even if they get their money back or once they get their money back, then they keep equity in the deal forever and they build long-term wealth. And then what happens then is there's a predictability to it. Like worst case scenario, I make 10% of my money. Yes, Mrs. Jones, I feel good with that. Then she invests, right? Best case scenario, there's some upside and we sell the property and we get this big windfall of cash and she gets even more money. But at least there's kind of like a safety net built in there. But if you want to learn about raising money, go to that legacywealthshow.com And there's a couple of them in there. There's one with my chief investment officer, Fadi Boumitri, and there's another one with my commercial mortgage broker, Chris Litzler, and there's another one with a good buddy of mine named Josh Cantwell, all about raising money and how to structure it the right way. So there's a lot of good insights on those.
I think I can see it.
Okay, and we have one other question. Can you recommend a resource to look at trends in the real estate market in the Cleveland area, or how do you go about researching that?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think I lean heavily on my commercial mortgage broker. That guy that I just referenced, his name's Chris Litzler. Super sharp guy, works for Marcus and Millichap. He brokers all of my loans. And he has data and analyses and every sort of report that you could possibly want on market trends, specifically with commercial real estate. You can a lot of times get those same trends with a residential mortgage broker as well. They can pull from the MLS or they can pull from other data sources. So, talking to a real estate agent or a residential mortgage broker on the residential side, on more like the single family stuff, you can get a lot of insights there. They can pull a bunch of reports for you. And then there's certain softwares like Reonomy and CoStar and LoopNet and things like that, where you can pull some information on market trends as well for commercial real estate. But usually, if you go to like CoStar, or if you have somebody with a CoStar account, there's a lot of great data on that you can really get a good idea of what's going on with the market. Is population increasing, flat? Is it decreasing? And data is important, but really buying it at a deep discount is more important than the data. Understanding the data of what the real value is, but buying it at a deep discount, because like I live in Strongsville, right? Like Strongsville's been flat for 20 years, but it's still kind of like an A-class area to go out and buy real estate. Lakewood, there's A-class and like C+ class areas of Lakewood, and Lakewood's been totally built up. The population has limitedly grown, but pretty much been stagnant at whatever it is, like 50,000 people. But people with more money now, right? And there's some different other analytics and different data. And the reality is, the most important thing in real estate, the only thing that we can control is the purchase price on a deal. So, what the stabilized or after repair value is going to be fixed. What kind of money that you put into the property and renovate it, whatever that renovation budget, that's a fixed number. I know people try to scale that back, but you can't do that. It doesn't do any good for the property. So the only thing that kind of is a variable where you can adjust the number is really the purchase price. So all the money's made when you buy the property, and you want to make sure you're buying it at a deep discount.
Great. That's all the questions that we have that came in. Rick did want to just say to you, thank you for your willingness to share and educate today, that he appreciated this.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. And if anybody wants to connect with me, shoot me a message, whatever. I'm really active on Facebook and Instagram. Like those are the two that I'm always on. So hit me up on either of those. And if I can share any resources or make it a connection for you, always happy to help out other fellow Miamians.
Yeah, I'll echo Rick's comments. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time. It means a lot to us as we continue down this Redbrick Leadership Series. And also want to shout out to Dave Lipinski for the introduction. I really appreciate that. That's it. Thank you so much. Again, hope you have a nice evening. Do want to do some just updates so everybody's aware of some events that we do have coming up in the next few months. We do have a joint event for Miami alumni with Cleveland Toastmasters. So Toastmasters is a public speaking group, and we're going to do a webinar about just how to better ourselves in the virtual environment, but then mastering the public speaking fear and conquering it. So that's Tuesday, July 14th. That'll be a noon webinar. Another Redbrick Leadership Series on August 6th. We might have some coming up before that, but we're going to have the Ohio Supreme Court Justice Pat DeWine be a guest, and that's going to be open up to the Columbus and Cincinnati chapters as well. And then just so everybody is aware, we are planning business as usual for our golf outing August 21st at Manakiki Golf Course, 10 a.m. shotgun start. And that email should be circulating soon so that we can sign up and get it going. We are also looking for sponsors, so if anybody's interested in giving back to the cause of the Cleveland Scholarship Fund, we hope that you can join us. Once again, Tim Bratz, appreciate all you did today and your time. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you having me, man. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
Great, thank you both so much, both Tim and Allen. I hope that you all enjoyed your time with us and learned something new, and will join us for one of the Cleveland Chapter's events in the future. Stay tuned for those registration pages. We're also always updating our website, miamialum.org, with fun new virtual events, so be sure to check that out as well. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and have a great rest of your week. As always, love and honor.